At number 10 is the insane, undefeated streak that Argentinian icon and terrible human Carlos Monzon capped by retiring the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. Monzon began his professional boxing career at 20 and began knocking people senseless immediately. But for all his raw power, his lack of experience was causing him trouble. In his first 19 fights, over only 18 months, he knocked out 14 men, but lost 3 of the 5 fights that went the distance. But he learned his lessons quickly, and his third loss would be his last, ever. Escopeta, or Shotgun as he was known, went on to fight 80 fights for 71 wins and 9 draws. He lived up to his nickname, displaying brutal power and absolutely terrorizing the middleweight division. Despite the incredible popularity his aggressive style and success earned him, it wasn't until his 80th fight that he finally got a shot at a major title. When he did, it was for the only 2 that mattered at the time, the WBA and WBC. The man who held them was Italian Olympic hero Nino Benvenuti, who Monzon savagely knocked out in the 12th. His first defense was against Benvenuti again, and he beat the challenger so soundly his corner threw in the towel in the second.
The second round, and after another brutal hammering, in goes the towel. But Benvenuti wants to see it out. What a glutton for punishment.
Escopeta would successfully defend the title another 13 times, only losing the WBC belt when he was stripped on a technicality. But even the commission couldn't stop him, and he won his title back, defended both one more time, and retired the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. He hadn't been beaten in 13 years. When the average person thinks about a knockout streak, they might think about Mike Tyson. At one stage, he finished 19 men in a row before the final bell, which isn't even close to the best. Modern-day boxing fans might think of the middleweight destroyer Gennady Golovkin. His streak of 23 knockouts from 23 straight wins rightfully earned him his fearsome reputation. But Triple G is still left wanting. The big Ukrainian Vitaly Klitschko outstreaked Tyson and Triple G by starting his career with 27 fights, 27 wins, and 27 knockouts. He's getting close to what we're after. But in Wilfredo Gomez's first 33 fights, he went 32-1 with 32 knockouts, 14 of those coming from title fights. A record like that would put him at the top of this knockout streak list, if it wasn't for one man.
The Bronze Bomber, Deontay Wilder.
They call our number 9 Deontay Wilder the Bronze Bomber for 3 main reasons. The first is that he won an Olympic bronze medal in heavyweight boxing for the United States. The second is that it's a tribute to the heavyweight icon and fellow heavy hitter Joe Louis, whom they called the Brown Bomber during WW2. And the final reason is that the Bronze Bomber's fists are fit for ending wars. In Wilder's first 33 fights, he went 33 wins with 32 knockouts, and he only went past the 4th round once. Unlike Gomez, only one of those fights was a title fight, and that was the one that went the distance. But also, unlike Gomez, Wilder won that fight, and then some. After demolishing Bermane Stiverne for 12 rounds, rocking him several times in the process, Wilder would then go on to defend his belt with another 7 consecutive knockouts before someone could finally take him the distance again. That man was the lineal champ Tyson Fury. And while the Gypsy King survived to the final bell, he hit the deck twice before the bout was declared a draw. Most amazing is that Deontay Wilder achieved all of this at heavyweight, the division where every opponent you face could end your night with one punch. And for that, the Bronze Bomber is the man to beat for knockout streaks. Winning a title is difficult, but defending it is much, much harder. At At number 8 are two almost absurd title defense streaks that would be unbelievable if the men who achieved them hadn't been so talented. Bernard Hopkins set the pace when he beat Felix Trinidad to become the unified middleweight champion. The victory was his 15th defense of the IBF title, beating the record of 14 Carlos Monzon had set 24 years earlier. B-Hop then beat another 6 people. On the way, rearranging the internal organs of future business partner Oscar de la Hoya to earn the final alpha belt and become the undisputed champion at 160 pounds. By the time he eventually lost to Jermaine Taylor, he had defended his middleweight title a record 20 times and been a champion of the division for a grand total of 10 years, 2 months, and 18 days. He was 40 years old. So powerful was the streak that it would stand unmatched for another 13 years. It would take a Kazakhstani force of nature by the name of Gennady Golovkin to attempt the run. Although, if you asked him, he wasn't even trying.
For me, it's more important like win fight, not record, not beat Bernard Hopkins' record. I respect Bernard. Bernard, he is idol, he is history guy, you know, he's a great champion. You know, first of all, for me, more important, my career, my rating.
Gennady's first belt was the WBA, which he defended with 10 knockouts and a retirement before getting a shot at Marco Antonio Rubio's WBC belt. He waltzed past Rubio with a second-round knockout, and 3 more KOs later, he was holding David Lemieux's IBF title as well. Had history been different, he would have equaled Hopkins' record against the great Canelo Alvarez in their first fight. But a draw and a Canelo drug test meant Golovkin's 20th defense was an underwhelming victory over the hopelessly unprepared Vanes Martirosyan. Some tough scoring in his rematch against Canelo Alvarez prevented Triple G from breaking Bernard's record, but he had managed to match it 2 years quicker, taking just 8 years to reach the milestone by the time he was 36. One man did it older, one man did it faster, but both men hit a streak that may never be equaled. Wins in the heavyweight division are like gold. When everyone is big and strong enough to score a knockout with or without technique, every heavyweight is competing on a hair trigger, which makes our 2 streaks at number 8 so impressive. In MMA, the greatest heavyweight streak ever recorded was by the greatest fighter to never compete in the UFC, Fedor Emelianenko. From 2001 to 2009, the last emperor beat every big name from Cro Cop to Andrei Arlovsky, in promotions from Pride to Affliction. 9 years, 26 wins, no losses. Unbelievable. For context, the longest streak ever recorded in UFC heavyweight history is Fabrizio Verdun's 6. That's 20 wins short. Of course, boxing's heavyweight history is long and storied and included a time when fighters would fight every month, sometimes more. But even with the crazy numbers this era could produce, Joe Louis's reign stands out. The Brown Bombers started beating people 3 years before the Second World War began and finished with his first retirement 3 months before it ended. Sure, he may have beaten a man literally known as Johnny Paycheck, but he also beat the German champion Max Schmeling in the first round and Jersey Joe Walcott twice in a row. His numbers defy comprehension. Undefeated for 4,330 days, heavyweight champion for 11 years, 8 months, and 8 days, 25 title defenses with 23 stoppages. When every fight you enter is like walking across a minefield, Emelianenko and Louis's achievements tower above the competition. Coming in at 6 is Vasily Lomachenko, a boxer so extraordinary, he could have made the list for any number of reasons. His amateur record of 396-1 is uncanny, and his titles in 3 different divisions in only 12 fights sounds fictional. But look a little deeper, and there's a short streak that speaks volumes about how dominant Loma is in the ring. In one 12-month period from 2016 to 2017, the Ukrainian sweet scientist fought 4 top-level boxers in defense of his junior lightweight title. All 4 quit. Retiring on the stool between rounds is a rare and generally frowned-upon way to finish a fight. Many are the fighters who have continued on through broken bones or near total blindness rather than be seen as a quitter. The most famous example is Roberto Duran's infamous retirement in his second fight against Sugar Ray Leonard, forever known as the No Mas fight. The moment plagued Duran for the rest of his career. Vasili's first victim was the undefeated Jamaican Nicholas Walters, who refused to come out for an 8th round. Then American Jason Sosa declined a 10th, and Colombian Miguel Mariaga wasn't interested in anything after the 7th. By now, Lomachenko's nickname had changed from High Tech to Nomaschenko. But everyone expected a different result from the 17-0 Cuban, Guillermo Regan Diaz, who was in the top 5 pound for pound when the two met. But Vasily worked the Cuban over like violent smoke, landing and then disappearing to render the challenger impotent and frustrated. He refused to answer the bell for the 7th round after landing only 15 of 178 punches. To cause one man at the peak of his career to completely give up is a remarkable achievement. But 4 in a row, that is a streak for the ages. Streaks are harder to achieve in MMA than boxing. With the narrower nature of competition and increased power of promoters over matchups, there is less chance for dominant fighters to book soft opponents to protect themselves. Which just goes to show why Anderson Silva's title defense streak remains Exhibit A in any argument made about his GOAT status. As he's aged, it's become easy to forget how truly transcendental Spider's MMA performances were. He was a sorcerer from the future, capable of doing things to professional martial artists that no one else would be able to do for years. From the moment Silva used his knees to reconfigure Rich Franklin's DNA and take the UFC middleweight belt, he seemed to create new and exciting ways to keep his title. 10 title challengers tried and failed. It should have been 11. But his first challenger, Travis Lutter, missed weight and the title was taken off the table. Silva choked him out in the 2nd regardless. He held the title for 2,457 days. 4 years later, flyweight champion Demetrius Johnson single-handedly boosted the self-esteem of short, bald men everywhere when he first equaled and then beat Silva's record. Over his 11 defenses, Mighty Mouse cleaned out his division like he wanted his bond back. Finding opponents became so difficult at one point that the UFC ran an entire season of The Ultimate Fighter dedicated to finding someone who could hang with the champ. By the time Henry Cejudo and the California State Athletic Commission judges ended his run with a controversial split decision, he had held the flyweight belt for 2,142 days. Anderson Silva and Demetrius Johnson both owned their divisions for years, stamping their dominance on the history books and locking in their position at number 5 on our list. At 4 is the scariest man to ever try his hand at mixed martial arts, the Dagestani destroyer, Khabib Nurmagomedov. It's a well-known aspect of the Eagles' legend that he trained with bears as a child in Dagestan, as part of the wrestling training his father put him and the local boys through. It seems to have worked, because when a fight gets to the mat, Nurmagomedov has an ability to maul an opponent that bears more than a passing resemblance to his former Ursine opponents. He hit the UFC with the wind behind him in the form of 15 straight wins, 7 of which had come in 2011. Since hitting the big show in 2012, he has beaten everyone brave enough to face him on his way to the lightweight championship belt. His biggest test came in his first defense of the belt when one of its former owners, Irish megastar Conor McGregor, swanned back to the sport with greatness on his mind.
I plan on knocking that man's nose straight into the nosebleeds. That's what's going to happen on Saturday night.
But McGregor got handled like everyone before him. suffering Khabib's relentless wrestling pressure for minutes before eventually tapping in the 4th round. Unfortunately, right now, it's impossible to tell exactly how good Nurmagomedov is at the sport of MMA. Because to measure something, you need to know its limits, and he has yet to find his. All we can say for sure is that he's better than everyone else so far. If there's 2 things that Floyd Mayweather is happy about, it's money and his undefeated 50-0 record. The most undefeated wins any champion in history has retired with, despite what he says.
50-0, I don't really worry about numbers. Only numbers I really worry about is these type of numbers.
Mayweather's 50-0 pipped the long-standing record held by the legend Rocky Marciano. But let's compare their records in more detail.
Look at that body.
Mayweather fought between super feather and light middleweight, often moving up and down weights in search of the biggest paycheck. This also meant that Mayweather could pick and choose who to fight. And more importantly, who not to. In particular, Mayweather straight up refused to fight Antonio Margarito, Miguel Cotto when Cotto was steamrolling everyone, and most famously Manny Pacquiao when the Pac-Man was chewing up prospective Mayweather opponents like ghosts in a maze. And retiring former Mayweather opponents like they were senior citizens in need of a nap. As a career heavyweight, Rocky Marciano had no such luxury. He fought everyone he had to get to the title. And when he got there, he defended against the best opponents possible because he had no choice, and he usually knocked them out. But there's one more thing that makes Mayweather's record seem a little lame.
The notorious Conor McGregor weighs in at a ready 153 pounds.
Mayweather beat Marciano's record fighting for a fake championship belt against Conor McGregor in McGregor's first ever professional boxing match. Meanwhile, Marciano retired as the undisputed heavyweight champion after knocking out Archie Moore, one of the most skilled boxers the sport has ever known. So sure, Mayweather will always have the 50-0 number that he'll brag about for all eternity. But he knows as well as we all do who the real champ is. It's no secret that Mexico loves its boxers. And at number 2 is the boxer they love more than any other, Julio Cesar Chavez. When Floyd Mayweather retired at 50-0, a lot of noise was made about how incredible the number was. While 50-0 is undoubtedly noteworthy, it should never be forgotten that when Julio Cesar Chavez entered the ring against Pernell Whitaker in 1993, his record read 87-0. That fight was scored even, and Chavez was not beaten for another 2 bouts, taking his unbeaten streak to 89 fights. Included in this ridiculous run of wins were 3 divisional titles and a run of 20 straight knockouts. He was Ring's pound-for-pound number 1 from 1990 to 1994, and his fight against Greg Haugen at Estadio Azteca drew the largest crowd in history, 132,274. Had JCC retired before fighting Frankie Randall, he would have retired with the greatest boxing record ever recorded. Better than Rocky, or Floyd, or even Wanheng Metayotin. But he fought on until the ripe old age of 43, continuing to win fights at the highest level for years. He retired with a record of 107, 6-2 with 86 knockouts, and will always be known as the greatest fighter Mexico ever produced. Were it not for Jake LaMotta, our number 1 streak would have been known as the greatest sporting achievement in history. Even with the work of the great spoiler, Sugar Ray Robinson's efforts are legendary. Debuting in 1940 at Madison Square Garden, no one could guess how good the 19-year-old lightweight was. By the time he'd beaten 40 men straight in just over 2 years, it was pretty clear he was world class. According to the newspapers, if you included his amateur career, he was on 129 straight wins. But a 20-year-old LaMotta put on a legacy-making performance, ending Robinson's streak at 40 professional fights. 40 straight was a good streak, world-class for sure, but not historical. Any other boxer may have been satisfied. For a 21-year-old Robinson, the loss set him on a road of destruction unmatched in boxing.
German was certainly game. Rising from the canvas time and time again, he did his utmost to carry the fight to Robinson. But that's something Robinson doesn't allow. They're half out already. Stretch fought on between knockdowns during 4 rounds and a bit. The end came in the 5th. Once again, Sugar, who's surely the boxer of the year, won by a knockout.
89 men in 8 years fell to Sugar Ray's terrifying skill. He outboxed or knocked out an average of 11 men a year from 1943 to 1951. He even managed a stint in the Army during this time, where he served alongside Joe Louis and fought his hero, Henry Armstrong. In 1951, Robinson was on the last leg of a European tour, traveling with his 13-person entourage, which included a dance instructor, a hairdresser, and a dwarf named Arabian Night. Obviously, he was riding high and feeling good after 8 years of winning. He was due to fight the little-known Englishman Randolph Turpin, a 23-year-old with a merely human 42-1 record facing Sugar's godlike 129-1-2. Robinson was justifiably confident when asked about the fight. Well, I'd like it to be just 1 round, the champion quipped, but they tell me that Turpin won't cooperate, so I guess that it won't go more than 15 rounds. Maybe it was the distraction of his entourage, or the wear and tear of touring, or perhaps Sugar just had a bad night. But Randy Turpin took the legend the distance, winning the fight and the belt by decision. Robinson avenged the loss 2 months later, but seemed to have had the wind knocked out of his sails. 2 fights later, he suffered a 3rd loss and retired from boxing to pursue a career in dancing.
I've gone into show business because dancing is something I've always loved. A lot of my fans are wondering in regards to my intentions of boxing again. As yet, I have not made up my mind.
Sugar would return to the ring 3 years later, but his greatest achievements were behind him. 1 great streak followed by another unmatched by anyone, anywhere, with only 1 loss in between. There's no question that Sugar Ray Robinson's win streak is the greatest of all time. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you want more fight sports in your life, just hit the subscribe button.